We have Senator Banta.
I got one bill for Senator Cooper. It'll be real short.
Sorry. Yes, you have AB 13, no wait.
1042.
It's Cooper's bill.
Oh, I'm sorry, that's right. Members, this is Senator Alejos presenting for Senator Cooper. That's AB 1042, which has a due pass recommendation. Again, it has a due pass recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And members, it will be real brief. AB 1042 updates the definition of a proprietary private security officer to further professionalize the security guard industry and protect the general public. The intent of this bill is to ensure that individuals providing security services are properly trained and licensed. This bill adds examples of security officer duties to ensure individuals employed by a business such as a bar or restaurant and who provide security services are not unlicensed. Additionally, this bill allows employees of security companies to provide timely payment of wages because many security officers, employees work weekends. The bill defines a pay period as a work week as opposed to a calendar week. I respectfully ask for an aye vote.
Thank you. Witnesses in support.
Mr. Chairman and members, Kelly Jensen representing CalSAGA, the security guard industry. We are in strong support. We worked hard with the Department of Consumer Affairs to further narrow the bill to cut costs. The second provision dealing with the work week pay standard is very important to the industry. We ask for aye support and appreciate Mr. Alejo stepping in for the author. Thank you.
Thank you. Additional witnesses in support. Witnesses in opposition. Finance.
We don't have a position on this bill, but we do anticipate that the annual revenues would slightly exceed the annual costs of the bill.
Thank you. Comments or questions from committee? There's a motion by Senator Leyva. Secretary, please call the roll.
The motion is due pass to the Senate floor. Lara?
Aye.
Lara, aye. Bates? Bates, aye. Bell? Hill? Hill, aye. Leyva? Leyva, aye. Mendoza? Nielsen? Nielsen, aye.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman and members.
Thank you, Mr. Alejo. The bill will be uncalled to allow absent members to add on to this item. Next, I don't see Mr. Banta, so we'll go with Ms. Irwin. Ms. Irwin, you have one item. It is a candidate for suspense, AB 770. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Lara. I'm pleased today to present AB 770. This bill was the basis for the Basic Skills and Student Outcomes Transformation Program included in this year's budget and supported with a $60 million one-time allocation of Prop 98 funds. This investment represents a tremendous opportunity to make an ongoing impact in an area that has long been an obstacle to student success. For that reason, we have a broad coalition of business, labor, social justice, faculty, and student groups who are committed to pursuing these reforms to basic skills education. This bill provides guidance to the Chancellor's office and will require colleges that are applying to provide a plan of action. AB 770 will ensure that this money is targeted effectively. This includes prioritizing the number of students who will be impacted, implementation plans, and projected outcomes. Many years of data demonstrate the great potential offered by this policy, but given that this is one-time funding, AB 770 is an important and timely accountability measure. Thank you.
Thank you. Witnesses in support of this item. Witnesses in opposition. Finance.
We don't have a position on this bill, but we're not really sure that we see costs here. While the Chancellor's office has indicated the need for one position and $130,000 general fund to implement it, we would note that the new Basic Skills Grant Program included in the Budget Act created workload for the Chancellor's office and resources, and we don't think that this necessarily adds significantly to that workload.
Thank you. Comment or questions from committee? Senator Nielsen.
Mr. Chairman, I would add that this legislation is consistent with the master plan of higher education. As it would relate to the responsibilities of the community college, this is a long ago and long forgotten. Governor Brown brought in the master plan of higher ed, which defined the mission, goals, and interrelationships of the three levels of higher education. In the 1980s, Assemblyman Vasconcellos and I reviewed it, and it was updated. And I would only note that this is very consistent with that master plan, and it helps us keep the master plan intact and not get drifting off. I appreciate the authors bringing the bill, and we'll support it.
Thank you. Additional comments or questions from committee? Seeing and hearing none, Ms. Irwin, would you like to close?
Just ask for your support.
Thank you. Without objection, we move this item to the suspense file.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Burke, please come forward. Assemblywoman Burke has one item. It's a suspense candidate, AB 1393. Whenever you're ready.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chair and Senators. The California Capital Access Program, or CalCAP, provides loans to qualifying small businesses that might not otherwise be able to obtain a loan. In addition to their support for small businesses, their financing has been critical for several of our clean air and energy efficiency programs. They've worked with the Air Resources Board to help businesses invest in newer, cleaner trucks, and they're providing financing for electric vehicle charging stations. AB 1393 will build on the success of CalCAP program and allow the program to provide loans and credit enhancements to individual customers. If we're going to meet our carbon emission reduction goals, we'll need to broaden our outreach and support. Think of it this way. The residents on the west side of my district may not have any problems buying a Tesla, but for just about everybody else, a hybrid and electric vehicle are out of reach without meaningful incentives and financing. By expanding CalCAP, the programs funded by our cap and trade resources can reach communities and consumers that may never be able to have access to reducing their carbon footprint and energy use without a little help. AB 1393 will be able to partner with financial institutions to invest in cleaner, smarter communities for all. I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Thank you. Witnesses in support.
Good morning, Chair and members. Vanessa Garcia on behalf of State Treasurer John Chung, who is the chair of the California Pollution Control Financing Authority and the sponsor of the bill, and look forward to working with the committee as the bill is on suspense.
Thank you. Additional witnesses in support.
Executive Director of the Pollution Control Finance Authority. My name is Renee Webster Hawkins, and again, I would echo the Assembly members' comments and testimony. Our CalCAP program has been successful for over 20 years in incentivizing lenders to make difficult loans to small businesses. The Air Resources Board has recognized this and has indicated that there's an opportunity here to use some of their existing funding and to help us administer programs that would, again, partner with lenders to incentivize private loans to those individuals that may have difficulty meeting traditional underwriting criteria. We think this is a great pilot program under the Air Resources Board charge to make these resources and get clean vehicles into disadvantaged communities, and we think that there's a great opportunity here.
Thank you. Additional witnesses in support.
Charles Watson on behalf of Valley Clean Air Now in support. Thank you.
Thank you. Witnesses in opposition. Finance.
We're neutral on this bill.
Comments or questions from committee? Seeing and hearing none, Ms. Brooke, would you like to close?
I respectfully request that I vote.
Thank you. Without objection, we move this item to a suspense file. Thank you for your time. Senor Bonta. Mr. Bonta has several items. Mr. Bonta, you are waiving presentation on AB 533 and AB 1140, is that correct?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
And you're presenting on AB 1432 members, which does enjoy a due pass recommendation. Mr. Bonta, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the recommendation. Today I present to you AB 1432, which in its current form would enact the April 2015 rate recommendation by the Board of Pilot Commissioners. The board licenses and regulates up to 60 pilots who guide ships of 750 gross tons or greater in the bays of San Francisco, San Pablo, Susan, and Monterey, and on tributaries to ports in Stockton and Sacramento. The board consists of 7 members appointed by the governor and 1 ex officio member, and it recommends rates to the legislature after a long process that includes hearings and public input. Senators, the reason I have put forth this bill is because this industry has a direct impact on my district and on the state. The San Francisco Bar Pilots and the Pacific Merchant Shipping Association both provide a critical service, ensuring goods are moved safely and efficiently across our waterways. The bar pilots are in a unique position regarding their rate structure. Their rates cannot be raised without action from the legislature. So we have a board proposal, and now it's up to this body to approve those rates. And since I introduced this measure, I made a commitment to work with the parties involved to try and reach a consensus. We've met on multiple occasions over the past few months to address outstanding issues, but as of this time, unfortunately, we have not arrived at an agreement. We continue to be open to that possibility, though, of course. I'd like to thank PMSA and the bar pilots for their willingness to work together and with me during this process, And with me to testify in support, I have Shea Salinas.
Thank you. Witnesses in support.
Chairman, members, Shea Salinas on behalf of the San Francisco Bar Pilots. I'll be brief. As the Assembly member pointed out, this is a unanimous recommendation from the Board of Pilot Commissioners. They voted 6-0 to move this recommendation to the legislature, including the one oil industry representative. To the Assembly members' points regarding working with the opposition, we still continue to have those talks, and we are open to further discussions as the bill moves forward. We ask for your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, Mitch Seaman with the California Labor Federation, also here in support. As mentioned, this simply implements the unanimous recommendations of the board and has no general fund impact, and we urge your support.
Thank you. Any additional witnesses in support? Witnesses in opposition?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members. Mike Jacob with Pacific Merchant Shipping Association. Before we start, I'd just like to thank the author for his kind words and commend him for his personal time and effort into trying to mediate and actually being an effective mediator between the parties with respect to getting us close to an agreement. Unfortunately, we don't have an agreement, so we're regrettably here in opposition to the bill. At the end of the day, this is a monopoly. It's set up by the state to provide services that we're compelled by law to take. This is not a collective bargaining agreement where we're the employers. It's in your hands with respect to what the correct rates should be for vessels that come in. And the way that the tariff has been set up is it's a commissioning system based on the size of vessels with respect to most of the revenue. And so as we all know, as ships get bigger, pilots get paid more. And the question is, how much further beyond the level of expense that we were able to get to an agreement on in private with Mr. Bonta's help, do you want to take income beyond the existing $450,000 baseline that they're already receiving? Last time we were in front of this body in 2011, the projection for pilot incomes by 2014 was $360,000. It's now $450,000. The rate didn't change, just the size of vessels. So we anticipate that trend to continue. We had consensus between the parties on that rate moving forward. And we're just at a place where we just don't have an agreement. So as long as this bill reflects the existing recommendation for another 10% on top of what that is, that's another $16 million once it gets fully implemented over 4 years. We just have real problems with that. So for all those purposes, moving forward, we just don't think we can justify another rate increase at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Additional witnesses in opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, Doug Subers on behalf of the Western States Petroleum Association. We appreciate the work that's been done in an effort to come to a consensus, but unfortunately, we have to oppose the bill at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Perhaps, Mr. Bonta, you're closed. Yes, I understand. Give me a second.
Sandy George, representing Maersk Line and the Cruise Line Industry Association. We also echo the same position. Unfortunately for the maritime industry, the ocean carriers, there are 18 of them. Only 3 are making any money at all. Those were not through rate increases. The rest are still losing millions of dollars. They have yet to recover from the recession, so we cannot support it this time, but we do appreciate the author's efforts.
Thank you. Perhaps in your close, Mr. Bonta, if you can update us on the status of any negotiations. Comments or questions from committee? Senator Bates.
Just the negotiations, what are the issues? Is pension one of those? And have there been any reforms instituted on pensions like we have done here at the state? So that could be part of the discussion?
Thank you for your question. The way that the issue is teed up today is it's an up or down on the commission proposal. But because we have negotiations, you can be more creative, you can be more nimble, you can be more flexible. One of the issues that we have been discussing appropriately is pension. We haven't been able to get to an agreement on how to move forward on pension, but I think there is a shared belief that we need to address the pension going forward. That's my view, and I've encouraged that discussion. But it requires data collection and then agreement on a path forward. And besides a general belief that we need to work on it, there hasn't been a firm set of agreements between the parties. So, but that's why I prefer the negotiation process, because you can be more creative, you can reach out and address other issues as you put together the package. Unfortunately, we haven't been able to do that up to this point. And we have a deadline. We put this over a week to continue negotiations, and we met during that interim period. And as I said, we're always open to continue to talk, and I feel I have good relationships with both sides, but sometimes negotiations are difficult and you can't always get to yes right away.
Well, we know that, having served at the County Board of Supervisors during the recession, it took us 2.5 years to finally get an agreement, and it was a good one in the end. So wishing you well, but when you look at the salary and you're increasing it by almost $50,000, talking about $500,000, and usually people who have that kind of income rarely are involved in a mandatory pension plan. I mean, when you have that kind of income, usually you're doing pretty well in the market and 401ks, et cetera. I think the thing we all have to pay very close attention to is these are in perpetuity if that's the kind of pension plan you have. So when you no longer can do your job, you're retiring with essentially the same income. That would be a huge burden as you go forward in the years and the decades. So you have sometimes 2 and 3 generations who are on those kind of pension plans. It starts to, I think, shrink the opportunities for new people coming into the business. It's no longer affordable. So those are things I hope you're looking at as you are in the negotiations, because I know it's a very difficult job. My husband has a boat, and you know what all that entails. So I applaud those who are in this profession, but I think they need to take a long, hard look about the longevity of the profession with these kinds of increase in costs.
All great points, Madam Senator. There was a time when the industry agreed to the current approach to pension many years back, and it's essentially a pay-as-you-go approach. I think we all realize today, with the experience that we've gone through with different entities, including our own state, that that's maybe not the best approach, and that we need to have some changes. So there is a commitment to that discussion, just not an agreement on what that looks like. And I agree with respect to sustainability and how it could siphon away revenue that could go elsewhere. And that's a discussion we need to continue to have.
Yeah. Great.
Thank you. Additional comments or questions? Senator Nielsen.
Yes, I would focus in on the pension issue that I believe it does need to be addressed. The public looks at these incomes and looks pretty lucrative. They don't know what the pilots do, though, and what these ships are all about. I've had the pleasure of being out in the bay and watching. And that we have not had very many accidents is testimony to how they deal with these situations. It's not unlike the air traffic controllers. These enormous ships, enormous loads, and down in the bay, that turning basin is pretty small compared to what they have to deal with. And being in the wheelhouse, watching what goes on, I have a great sympathy for the risks they take and the responsibilities they have. That, in my mind, helps justify that they do have a good income. But with that good income, as Senator Bates said, usually we don't have too lucrative pensions going along with it. So this bill moves along. I certainly would encourage those discussions and a resolution that's substantive and enduring. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Nielsen, and thank you for your comments about the importance of the job in particular. It's a highly skilled job that's critical not just for goods movement in our economy, but for safety and for the health of our environment. Thank you.
Thank you. Finance, do you have a file on this item?
No file.
Thank you. Senator Leyva.
I just quickly have to weigh in on the pension issue. While I agree that people who are highly compensated usually have a different pension structure, I think we always have to be cognizant of a defined benefit pension and how that benefits workers when they retire. Again, I understand we're talking about highly compensated folks, but I also think people forget that people do these jobs based on a promise. They get hired and they plan their life and make life decisions based on what they're told. And while these are highly compensated folks and they have a really critical job, they made the decision to do that job partly based on the income. And I just always have to jump in and talk about and defend defined benefit pensions, because as those go away, we will have bigger and bigger issues as a society when our retired folks can't take care of themselves. So, thank you.
Thank you. Any more questions or comments from committee? It is a candidate. Oh, there is a motion. But before we move forward, I just have to, Mr. Bonta, in your deliberations, which just other issues to highlight. Again, I do understand that these bar pilots do a very important job, and they do get compensated very well. The issue of the severe lack of diversity within the group, and especially when it comes to having no women and no people of color, I think is something that we need to look at. And I have had many conversations with the bar pilots, understand that they have various programs to outreach to women and people from underrepresented communities. But I think when we continue to push on other folks that are affiliated with the state to really reflect the new reality in California, I think it's important for us to continue to remind everyone the importance of diversity. So with that, there is a motion for due pass to the Senate floor. Secretary, please call the roll.
Laura? Aye. Laura, aye. Bates?
Aye.
Bates,
oh, no.
aye.
Excuse me, no.
Bates, no. Bell? Hill? Hill, aye. Leyva? Leyva, aye. Mendoza? Mendoza, aye. Nielsen? Nielsen, aye.
Currently 5-1. We'll keep that open to allow our absent members to add on. Thank you, Mr. Bonta.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, members and staff.